Yeah, it's audible. Okay. Please hold on for 1 or 2 minutes. We'll just start.
Recording in progress.
பண்ணலாமா அங்கே ஒர்க் ஆகுதா ஒர்க் ஆகுதா போ ஓகே. Hello everyone, good afternoon. Am I audible? Am I visible clearly? People who are present in the meeting, can you just confirm once so that we can proceed? Yeah, good. Okay. People with good internet, you can turn on your videos. The last session we discussed about important updates related to space science and astrophysics, correct? So today we'll be covering few important updates related to nuclear technology and some important updates about biotechnology. I'll be giving you a basic introduction about vaccines and everything. Good. Okay, to begin with, the two types of nuclear reactions that we discussed in the class when we started the GS classes. Okay, hello. Fission and fusion. Karthik said exactly. So fission reaction and fusion reaction. What's a fission reaction? When a larger nuclei, for example, most prominently uranium-235, in some cases plutonium-239. When these large atoms, when they are going to be hit by neutrons, they'll be subjected to a fission reaction where they will break into two or more smaller atoms. Generally, barium, krypton, xenon, and different elements, and it will emit a lot of neutrons, extra neutrons, and then around 216 mega electron volt of energy. I gave you 200, and in NCERT it's given as 216 mega electron volt of energy. If you want, you can just update the notes, correct? So this is nuclear fission reaction, wherein we have one more reaction called as nuclear fusion reaction, when two or more lighter nuclei, yes, when they join together, and then if they form heavier nuclei, you call it as a nuclear fusion reaction. When we discussed this concept, I told you to remember a thing called binding energy, correct? So what is binding energy? Generally, when atom is formed, first we'll do a theoretical calculation, correct? There will be a deviation between theoretical value of nuclear mass and the actual value. So this difference is what we call as a mass defect. The energy spent in creating the particular nucleus, that's called as a mass defect. So depending on the mass defect, we calculate something called as a binding energy, mass defect and binding energy. And I told you, if an atom has a greater binding energy, it means it's going to be more stronger. And if an atom has lesser binding energy, it's easy to break them. It's easy to break or fuse them, correct? So which is the element that had the highest binding energy? Yes, energy required to remove a nucleon from a nucleus, or the energy required to break a nucleus. That's called as binding energy. So in terms of binding energy, which element in the periodic table has the highest binding energy? Exactly, iron. So if we see the binding energy curve, you're going to plot the mass number for binding energy per nucleon. Then hydrogen will have lesser binding energy, and then there'll be a spike, and then there'll be a drop. The highest binding energy is for iron, Fe2656, correct? The highest binding energy is for iron. Now, wherein the right end of the periodic table, uranium and plutonium, they will have lesser binding energy, and hydrogen will also have lesser binding energy. These class of elements, they are used in nuclear fission reaction, wherein these elements, they are used in nuclear fusion reaction. So for nuclear fusion reaction, I told you, hydrogen will fuse to produce helium, a reaction that happens in stars, the sun, and everywhere. Wherein we have extensively discussed about different reactors that involve nuclear fission reaction. There are very few reactors that involves nuclear fusion reaction, basically combining of two or more lighter nuclei to produce a heavier nuclei. Good. So one such landmark reactor that's recently in news, it is East reactor, which is located in China. So understand, East is a nuclear fusion reactor. So it's called experimental advanced superconducting tokamak reactor. So you don't have to worry about writing the entire thing down, because similar to the previous class, I'll be sending you materials. I hope you all have received in your Telegram channels, correct? So similarly, by today or tomorrow, I'll be sending you the materials. Yes. So this is called as experimental advanced superconducting tokamak reactors. Whenever you see the term tokamak, it's a Russian technology that's used for fusion reaction. So this term refers to fusion reaction. Understand, any reactor that involves the name tokamak, it should be highly related, or it should be related with nuclear fusion reaction. Good. And the recent achievement by East reactor. The very first class, we were discussing about the sun, correct? Different layers and different regions in the sun. We started with the inner layer, that's called core, followed by radiative zone, correct? Starting from inner layer, we are progressing towards outer layer, core, radiative zone, and then we have convection zone, followed by the first visible layer, that is photosphere, and then we have chromosphere, and then core. And I particularly told you the core of the sun, the temperature of core of the sun, it goes up to 21 million degrees Celsius, correct? Estimated by, as per the data from NASA, it's estimated to be around 27 million degrees Celsius. Wherein if you see the tokamak reactor, so recently it set a new record. It achieved 216 million degrees Celsius. To put it in perspective, 10 times more than the temperature of sun, it's achieved on Earth using this particular nuclear fusion reactor. Clear? Oh, by the way, it's the temperature achieved is 216 million degree Fahrenheit, or in terms of Celsius, it's a 120 million degrees Celsius. Clear? So core of the sun, it's 27 million Fahrenheit, or it's around 15 million degrees Celsius. Core of the sun. So I made a mild confusion between the Fahrenheit and Celsius. Core of the sun, it has around 27 million degree Fahrenheit or 15 million degrees Celsius, wherein the temperature achieved by the tokamak reactor recently does this. Now the next question is how this was achieved. Because if it's going to have super hot temperature, how they are going to control it. See here, the internal structure of a tokamak reactor. It looks something like this, a cylindrical hollow tube, and the walls of the tube, they will have high magnetic field. Walls of the tube, they will have high magnetic field. And center, it has plasma. Can you recollect the term plasma when we discussed about sun? I told you 5 states of matter. Yes, solid, liquid, gas, plasma, and Bose-Einstein condensate. So what is a plasma? A nucleus and an electron. This is a normal atom. So if electron is going to be stripped off from the nucleus, if electron is going to be separated, if it no more orbits the nucleus, you call it as a plasma state. Basically superheated gas, it has plasma states. Good. Now the plasma will be orbiting, or it will be confined in this container, and this magnetic field, it will confine the plasma to the center. It won't allow it to touch the walls, because if it's going to touch the walls, it's going to lose heat, correct? Because it will conduct. Basically the sides of the wall, it will start conducting the temperature outside. So the magnetic field, it will try to push the plasma inside. the plasma is confined only to the center portion, kept in confinement for a longer time. So slowly the temperature increases. It goes up to 216 million degree Fahrenheit, and then nuclear fusion happens. So overall reaction for nuclear fusion, 4 hydrogen combines together to form helium, followed by some subatomic particles, correct? At least 4 hydrogen. So in this case, generally isotopes of hydrogen are used. Deuterium, tritium, these isotopes are used. Clear? We also call nuclear fusion reaction as a thermonuclear reaction, because unlike fission reaction, fusion requires input energy, correct? The main difference between nuclear fission reaction and the fusion reaction, atom bomb. In case of fission reaction, there is no requirement or specific requirement for temperature. It happens at room temperature. And pressure, no. No requirement. In case of fission reaction, wherein if you take fusion reaction, I told you it's called as thermonuclear reaction, because it requires higher temperature, up to 10 power 7 Kelvin or up to 10 power 9 Kelvin. A minimum of 1 million degrees Celsius is required to initiate a fusion reaction, first thing. And second thing, high pressure is required. Why it requires high temperature and pressure? I told you it is to overcome the Coulombic force of attraction and repulsion, correct? When two hydrogens is going to approach closer to each other, what will happen? One proton and one electron. Similarly, one proton surrounded by one electron. Two hydrogen atom, if they are going to approach closer to each other, first the electrons will repel each other, and following that the protons will repel each other. To overcome this mutual repulsion, to overcome the Coulombic force of repulsion, and then fuse together, it requires high temperature and high pressure, and recently a landmark has been achieved. This is sufficient. Clear? And the working mechanism, only limited information is given. Understand, magnetic field is used to confine the things to the center of the reactor overall. Good. And this tokamak reactor, so this is a part of ITER, International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, ITER. International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. So this project, it involves many countries, including Japan. India is a part of this project. They are building one of the largest fusion reactor in France. This is part of the program. Then European Union is a part, United States of America, and then Russia, China. Many world powers are part of International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. Oh, I forgot South Korea. What is India's role? There was a recent update. The cryostat lid, the outer lid of the reactor, it's manufactured by the L&T. India is supplying many components. So one such thing is the cryostat lid, cryo, sub-zero temperature. Cryostat lid. This is manufactured and it's being transported to France, and there are many other components that's going to be manufactured by India for the ITER. Done? We'll go to the next one. Next. We're going to talk about the Kakrapur. The Kakrapur Atomic Power Station in Gujarat. They have commissioned the third reactor. So what is special about the third reactor that attained criticality recently? What does it mean by criticality? Did we discuss about something called as criticality? If you go to hospital, the word critical, it may sound like a negative term, where in a nuclear reactor, criticality is a positive term, correct? If a nuclear fission reaction is sustained with proper number of neutrons, you call it as criticality. So Kakrapur 3, it has attained criticality recently, and most importantly, this is country's first 700 megawatt reactor. I repeat, 700 megawatt. The highest capacity by a single reactor. 700 megawatt electric unit, the production capacity of Kakrapur 3. And this is widely appreciated because it's part of the Atmanirbhar initiative. It's wholly constructed by India. Did we discuss about the type of reactors? What are the prominent type of reactors that's used in India? First, we have boiling water reactor. The earliest reactors, they were called as boiling water reactors, correct? Then we had pressurized water reactors and pressurized heavy water reactors, followed by fast breeder reactors. Out of these 4 reactors, I told you, one type of reactor employs indigenous technology. Which is the indigenous technology developed by India? Could you recollect from your class notes? Indigenous technology. We classified reactors based on purpose and one based on technology. Fast breeder reactor, it's yet to attain criticality, correct? Third one, exactly. The pressurized heavy water reactor. I told you the reactor that employs deuterium dioxide or heavy water. Heavy water is used as moderator, correct? Heavy water which is used as moderator. What is the function of moderator? A moderator basically slows down neutron. From a fast neutron, it is reduced to a slow neutron or thermal neutron. For the people who are watching this over YouTube, understand, you can find this particular topic in class 12 physics NCERT. Yeah? Class 12 physics NCERT, chapter number 12. There is a chapter called atoms, and chapter number 13, nuclei. Atoms and nuclei. Especially chapter number 13, towards the end, you have a complete detail about reactors. Since this is already discussed in the GS classes, we are just updating the current affairs. You can just read the basics if at all you have not studied, and then you can update it. Clear? FBR is also designed by IG Car and manufactured by Bhavini, I understand, but since it has not attained criticality right now, considering the reactors that are operating right now, PSWR, and this is a pressurized heavy water reactor. So that's why it's classified under Atmanirbhar initiative or self-sufficient India, where we don't depend on foreign technologies. Clear? Yes. And it has improved thermal margins. One scientific term. The thermal margin is improved. What is this thermal margin? Imagine they will set a maximum temperature at which a reactor can operate. The maximum threshold temperature at which the reactor can operate. The margin between the maximum thermal range and the operating temperature. This is called as a thermal margin. The maximum temperature at which a reactor can operate and the maximum temperature at which a reactor operates actually. The difference between these two temperatures is called as thermal margin, where India has drastically improved the thermal margin of this particular reactor. Done? We'll go to the next one. Yes, with respect to the reactors that are going to be commissioned in near time. See here, the Kakrapar 3, this is completed. Well, there are few more reactors that are being constructed in Rajasthan and Kudankulam, Tamil Nadu. This is part of our expansion program, so which was sanctioned in the year 2017. Right now, India is planning to increase the contribution of nuclear energy to the total energy output. But by 2031, we are planning to increase it from 6,000 mega electron volt. From 6,000 megawatt to around 22,000 megawatt. The figures are not needed, but understand right now India is planning to increase the share of nuclear power in rest of the power compared to it. Clear? Next, we have to start with the biotechnology part. I could find only 2 important updates to the nuclear technology. Now we have to start with biotech. First, what is this? A common practice among farmers, especially in Punjab, Uttar Pradesh region, that drastically increases temperature in Delhi. Shantanu sir, you should have encountered this problem, correct? Since you are from Delhi, yes. Stubble burning, yeah. First, why the problem of stubble burning exists in India? See, this happens especially during first week of October. October 1 to October 10, the first weeks of October. The farmers, they will burn the residual crops. All the stubbles that is left over from the previous harvest, they will burn it. First question, why they burn it? Because they are preparing for the next season, the Rabi season, which generally cultivates wheat. During Rabi, they will be cultivating wheat. So they want to clear the previous harvest. What is the previous harvest? In this case, if it's stubble, it's generally non-basmati type of rice. I repeat, non-basmati rice. And this creates a stubble. So instead of leaving the stubble for rotting, they will clear it so that they can they can sow the Rabi crop in next 10 days. This is the idea. How do we control it? Yes, no money and manpower to clean it, first of all. Exactly. Instead of spending money on cleaning this, they prefer to burn it, so that it's like a part of slash and burn agriculture. Once it burns, and then they can cultivate in the same region. Now, we have developed something called as a Pusa decomposer, a type of decomposer that could decompose the stubble in a period of 25 days. Yes, Pusa decomposer capsule. Exactly. So it's developed by ICAR, Indian Center for Agriculture Research, and Indian Agriculture Research Institute, IARI, which functions under ICAR. ICAR and Indian Agriculture Research Institute, two premier research institutions that develop this Pusa decomposer. So how it looks? It looks like this. Capsules. How they are going to use this capsule to decompose the stubble. See, this capsule, it will contain fungi. The organism used is important. They are not using bacteria, they are not using virus, it's a fungi. 4 different strains of fungi are packed in the particular capsule. So 4 different strains of fungi, it's packed in the tablet. So this tablet, it has to be mixed with water, jaggery and everything, so that there will be fungal growth. So once the fungus grows, it has to be sprayed all over the stubble. Once it's sprayed all over the stubble, it will accelerate the decomposition. In 20 to 25 days, the stubbles will decompose. This is an indigenous technology that we have designed. In fact, repeatedly, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal and many other people in the surrounding areas of Delhi, they have been talking about this. But this is considered to be one vital step taken by India to control stubble burning. When you receive the material, please read about a lab that functions under Indian Agriculture Research Institute. It's called as CREAMS. First, how do we know that most of the stubble burning happens in first week of October? Because we used satellite images. Good. For that, we have a lab. It's called as a Consortium for Research on Agroecosystem Monitoring and Modeling from Space. It's a lengthy expansion. So understand, it's a lab that functions under Indian Agriculture Research Institute. So it collects all the satellite images, compiles them together, and after enough study, it declared generally from October 1 to 10. This is when most of the stubble burning incidents happen, causing huge amount of pollution in Delhi and other surrounding areas. Clear? Please read about Pusa decomposer. Next, we have to talk about Saguna rice technique, SRT. One more harvesting or one more cultivating technique that has been developed to control stubble burning. Once again, what is the problem with stubble burning? How are we going to control the stubble? So in this method, it has a particular tool using which they can precisely cultivate crops. A tool, a technique that is designed to precisely cultivate crops with a proper spacing. So in this case, they generally uproot the plant. During the previous harvest, they will uproot the plant and only a small amount of root will be left inside. Not the stubble, only a small amount of root will be left inside, which will rot later. Good. So the major advantage is, first, the maturity of the plants, it's generally advanced by a period of 10 days. Before the harvest period, before 10 days, it will generally be ready for harvesting. So this is an indigenous technology developed by India. Clear? Yes. What is the advantage of preparing a crop 10 days before the harvest? So if at all there is unprecedented or unexpected rain, you can quickly harvest. The crops are getting matured much easier or much earlier. Clear? SRT, Saguna rice technique, a method of cultivation developed in India. Next, it's a zero-till agriculture, by the way. It does not require ploughing or anything. Using the instrument, you don't have to plough the land. You can directly cultivate. Done. Coming to the next one. We have to talk about a type of reactor. not nuclear fission reactor, not a nuclear fusion reactor. It's a garbage to power reactor. Once again, innovation by CISR. So we call this as anaerobic. What's meant by anaerobic? We have thoroughly discussed about anaerobic, correct? Especially when we were discussing about the phosphine presence on Venus. We were discussing about aerobic and anaerobic. What's meant by anaerobic? Without oxygen or in absence of oxygen or in deficient oxygen. So anaerobic doesn't always mean absence of oxygen. Sometimes even when a reaction happens in deficient oxygen, you call it as anaerobic. So this particular reactor, it's called as anaerobic gas lift reactor. Anaerobic gas lift reactor. So this has been developed by CSIR along with IICT, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology. Two premier research institutes, CSIR and Indian Institute of Chemical Technology. So they have designed this reactor and they have applied for patent to this reactor. So this reactor, it collects all the market waste. So whenever you go to market, you could see all the rotten vegetables or the vegetables that will be generally disposed. Good. They will collect these vegetables and they will be put in the reactor, and it can manufacture power that can power the entire market, and it can be connected to the power grid. So first indigenous anaerobic gas lift reactor that's being designed in India. Clear? The picture of reactor and everything is not given in press release. So understand, there is a garbage to power plant that's operating in India. Especially this is in Telangana. A market in Telangana, near Hyderabad. So it's called Ambedkar Agriculture Market, which is located in Bhavanpalli. You can read it later. But understand, it is located in Telangana. Clear? Yeah. Next. Non-GM origin GM free certificate. A certificate that is mandatory for food products that's being imported into India. See here. Non-GM, non-genetically modified origin genetically modified organism free certificate. So why this is in news? So effective from first week of March, this is made mandatory for any food product that's imported. Food or agriculture product that is imported from foreign countries, they should have this certificate. Now, there is a small issue that's surrounding it. They have mentioned one particular clause that's called adventitious presence. I repeat, adventitious presence, which means accidental or maximum amount of GM material that can be present in these imports. It can go up to 1% of the total mass. This has been mentioned by FSSAI, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. They have mentioned the adventitious presence. Involuntary or accidental presence, it can be up to 1%, which is criticized because all these matters, they were handled by the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. What is GEAC, which used to function under the Ministry of Environment, correct? Under Environment Ministry. They were interested, earlier they were interested with the responsibility of giving all the non-GM certificate and everything. So right now it has been diluted. Right now it's FSSAI who delivers this certificate. Good. Which is seen as a dilution of power, which has been mildly criticized, and inadvertentious presence of 1%, it can be used as a loophole for pushing more GM products inside the market, which is an area of concern that has been raised by many environmental activists. Good. Done. So if you get any statement saying who issues non-GM origin GM certificate, it used to be Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Right now it is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. Clear? Yeah. Coming to the next one. Diatom test. It was seen in news recently. Did you come across this? Diatom test, a type of algae test. Okay, Avinash sir has a question. The garbage to power reactor, does it involve only organic materials? Yes. So they generally collect market waste from that particular market and nearby markets. And they use only vegetable waste to produce the power. does not involve any synthetic material. So it's considered to be a green energy again. Okay. Yes. Let's leave the issue that surrounds why this diatom test is in news. Because in front of a famous industrialist home, they spotted a car loaded with explosives, correct? And following few weeks, the owner of the car, he was found dead in a lake. And then many speculations started. So let's not go into that issue. First, why they performed diatom test. So this person, the owner of the car, he was found dead in a lake. There are two possibilities by which he is found there. First, maybe he fell inside the lake when he was alive. Second possibility, maybe he was killed by someone and thrown into the lake. There are two possibilities, correct? So in this case, how they are going to decipher this? That's when the diatom test comes into play. These diatoms, as you could see here, microscopic diatoms, these are algae. Algae that are present in a particular, which is generally present in water bodies. In fact, most of you who drink water from pond or rivers, right now there is diatom in your body. There is different concentration of diatom that's present in different parts of your body. Good. So this diatom, it enters the body only through drinking water or through food. Two possibilities. So possibility number one, if a person is killed and then if he is thrown inside the water, he won't ingest water, correct? He won't drink water from that particular pond, which means the diatom test will show lower concentration of that particular diatom. Good. Case number two, if he was pushed inside the pond, or if he committed suicide or something by jumping inside the pond, before drowning to death, he would have consumed a lot of water. So in that case, the diatom, it will reach inside his body, inside his lungs and different parts of the body. So basically when they perform autopsy, two things. They will study the diatom concentration in the body, and then they will study the diatom concentration in that particular water body. These two are compared. If both of them matches, it means the person was alive when he was dumped inside the water. This is the meaning, correct? So diatom, it is an algae which is present in water body. So is it reliable all the time? No. There is one loophole in this. Clear? If a person is drinking water from the same water body for a long time, let's say if this is a metro water supply, good. So in that case, the diatom present in his body will match with the amount of diatom present in that particular water body. So in that case, if he is related to that particular water body by any means, maybe he derives his drinking water or anything from that particular source for a longer time, then this diatom test will not be useful. So this is like an additional test that is performed to check how the death happened. Clear? It's an algae, and understand all of us, we have diatom in our body, most of us. Clear? Yeah. Next, we'll talk about Bima bamboo. A bamboo that's developed in Tamil Nadu that can act as a carbon sink. So what is special about this bamboo? First, one of the fastest growing grass in the world. It can grow up to 1.5 feet per day if it's kept in tropical areas. Imagine 1.5 feet per day, practically around 90 centimeter, 45 centimeter in a day. One of the fastest growing one. And then it's known for carbon sequestration. It can intake carbon and it can act as a carbon sink. Now, important thing is this is indigenously developed in India and it's not a genetically modified organism, because this bamboo is different from other bamboos. This does not have any thorns. Thorns are absent in this bamboo because this is just a hybrid variety where thorns are absent. It can act as a carbon sink, and most importantly, this is sterile. This won't reproduce. Pollination or any type of budding will not happen. Clear? For this reason, this is considered to be a good carbon sink. Even though it is a hybrid, it is considered to be a good carbon sink. So Bima bamboo, used for sequestration of carbon. Keep this in mind. All 1 or 2 liners. There was an article in Down to Earth about it. I've given the article link in the material. You can just go through it once. Good. Since this course relates more to the prelims part, I'm not missing any important facts. Next. Zeolite. In fact, during the second wave of COVID pandemic, there was oxygen shortage, correct? There were 2 methods handled by the medical professionals for giving oxygen. First, the oxygen saturation, SpO2 level. Generally, if it's 100%, it's fine. If it drops below 94%, good. If the oxygen concentration in the blood, if it drops below 94%, then the person has to be given oxygen. There are 2 methods by which oxygen can be supplied to your body. First, using oxygen concentrators, Second, using liquid oxygen. So when a person requires a oxygen concentrator or when a person requires a liquid oxygen, see, if the oxygen concentration is somewhere between 80, saturation is somewhere between 88 to 94%, in that case, oxygen concentrators are enough. 88 to 94%. If it drops below 88%, then oxygen concentrators cannot provide adequate amount of oxygen to make the person survive. In that case, they require liquid oxygen. Did we talk about liquid oxygen when we discussed about the rocket technology? The liquefaction temperature for oxygen, what is it? Oxygen exists as liquid at minus 183 degrees Celsius. Can you recollect? We were talking about liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen that were used as rocket fuel. Yes. Hydrogen will exist as liquid at minus 253 degrees Celsius. Where an oxygen will exist as liquid only at minus 183 degrees Celsius. The biggest problem related to extraction and transportation of liquid oxygen. Good. This particular zeolite, this was airlifted by Indian Air Force and many times they were used in oxygen concentrators. What is this zeolite? First, the method by which it works. You take the atmospheric air concentration, mostly it consists of nitrogen, correct? The atmospheric air, the first major composition of atmospheric air is nitrogen. So nitrogen and then followed by oxygen. What is the concentration of nitrogen? It's around 79%, where in oxygen it may go up to 21%. So in this case, these oxygen concentrators, they will separate nitrogen from air. So how this is performed? Simple. It involves two methods, or it involves two steps. First, there will be a compressor. This compressor, it will compress the atmospheric air, component number 1. And component number 2, there will be a sieve bed. And they load zeolite in the sieve bed. Zeolite, it has the property of separating nitrogen from air. Good. I repeat, zeolite, it has the property of separating nitrogen from air. In that case, we will derive oxygen, which will be used for the patients. That's the idea. Done? Okay, Shantanu has a question. Is it like affinity chromatography? Okay, so affinity chromatography, it's more of a biological term because it depends on the interaction with other biomolecules. Wherein this is purely a physical method of separation. No chemical processes involved here. You compress the air and then you push it through a sieve bed. So this sieve bed that contains zeolite, it will separate the oxygen from nitrogen. That's how it works, correct? So this is purely a physical process. Done. Yeah. Next, we have to talk about something called as alkaloid. So why this was in news? First of all, where do they use alkaloid? Any idea? Where alkaloids are used? Class of compounds that are classified as alkaloids, even mentioned in NCERT, especially for cancer treatment and other places. Yes, medicine. Yeah, pain relief, exactly. So these are alkaloids. They are class of compounds that contains at least one nitrogen. By the way, the major composition of alkaloid, it will be nitrogen. So these class of compounds, they are generally used as drugs sometimes. And in many purposes, they are used in medicine field to relieve the pain, especially for persons with terminal illness. Good. Now, since it's used both as a drug and as a pain reliever, this production and everything is strictly monitored by the revenue department. Good. Please hold on. Yeah, revenue department under finance ministry. production, manufacturing, and export or internal usage. Everything is managed strictly by the revenue department. So right now, private players are roped inside. So why private players are roped inside? See, poppy, the plant that's used to extract opium. This is being cultivated in India, but in fact, in recent times, the acreage under which opium is cultivated has drastically decreased. But right now, we are roping in private players to manufacture what we call as concentrated poppy straws. Concentrated poppy straws, CPS. We have roped in 2 private companies, which means this requires amendment in Narcotics, Drug and Psychotropic Substances Act, NDPS Act, which was enacted in the year 1985, which mandates only government is supposed to manufacture alkaloid or opium. Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. For extraction of alkaloid, this one needs to be eased out. It has to be relaxed. Clear? The alkaloid that was in news recently, in fact, the name is important because we developed indigenous technology for manufacturing or extracting the alkaloid. We call it as camptothecin. This is important. Important alkaloid that's used in India. So this is extracted from 2 trees. One is a Chinese tree, the other one is an Indian tree. The name is given in the material. You can go through. Good. They have discovered an alternative source for manufacturing camptothecin, and this has been developed by IIT Madras. I repeat, IIT Madras has developed an alternative methodology to manufacture camptothecin. Alternative drug, especially used for cancer treatment. Clear? Coming to the next one. CAR T cell therapy. So why this was in news? So what is meant by CAR T cell therapy? Chimeric antigen receptor T cell. We'll be talking about T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. When we discuss the COVID, we'll be discussing about B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. For now, you can write down chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. So this is a cancer therapy. What is special about this? This has been giving a promising result, especially for cancer treatment. People have been recovering, and this therapy costs around 3 to 4 crore. Imagine 3 crore to 4 crore. We have been looking for an alternative or indigenous method by which CAR T therapy can be given. There are 2 important institutes that are or organizations that are involved here. First, Department of Biotechnology, DBT, which is under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Good. And then we have something called as BIRAC, organizations that are repeatedly seen in news, especially related to biotechnology. So Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, and this is Department of Biotechnology. This Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, it's a non-profit organization. This also functions under DBT. Now, what is the recent news about CAR T cell therapy? For the first ever time, the Tata Memorial Hospital, we have conducted the first CAR T therapy in India. I repeat, the first CAR T therapy. It has been conducted in Tata Memorial Hospital. A minor news, but it has been widely covered in different newspapers. Okay, understand. This is also supported by National Biopharma Mission. This particular therapy is supported by National Biopharma Mission. Now, we're going to talk about a drug which is called as aducanumab. Aducanumab. So what is special about this drug? If you could recollect the GS class, we were talking about the Alzheimer's disease, correct? We were talking about dementia. When we discussed about dementia, we discussed about the Alzheimer's disease, about the Parkinson's disease and everything. What was the prime cause for this particular dementia? There are several hypotheses, wherein one such hypothesis is amylo beta peptide. Can you remember this? Amylo beta peptide, where protein builds up in the brain. So when the protein builds up in the brain, it causes dementia or cognitive disability. So we discussed about IIT technology, correct? That is designed to clear this amylo beta peptide. How it was functioning? It used low voltage electric field, correct? Low voltage, low current electric field was applied to clear this beta amylopeptide, and it said it may not cure the dementia, but it may delay the onset up to 10 years, up to a period of 10 years. This is possible. This is also given the material. But right now, USA, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, they have approved the first ever drug, aducanumab, which is a monoclonal antibody. Monoclonal antibody. What are monoclonal antibodies? Specially manufactured white blood cells, correct? With unique immune properties. Yes. It's a monoclonal antibody that has been approved by Food and Drug Administration. This promises to clear the amylo beta peptide based on this particular hypothesis. The drug claims it can clear amylo beta peptides. So what is the controversy that surrounds it? First, it has been given accelerated approval. So what is this accelerated approval? Only phase 3 clinical trial is available. Phase 4 is not available. It is going to be directly tested on people who have Alzheimer's. And if people show the proper result, then phase 4 and everything will be continued, or else it will be discontinued. This is more like testing a drug that do not have enough evidence about the effect. But for the very first time, this has been approved by FDA, following pressure from the people who have Alzheimer's disease actually. Next, we're going to talk about something called as Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus. Yes, this drug is extremely expensive. In fact, it's going to cost around $50,000 per month, I think. Extremely costly. A common man cannot afford this. Okay, what is this Epstein-Barr virus? Before we start this, let me tell you, 95% of the people who are present in this meeting, you have Epstein-Barr virus in your body. Yes, Epstein-Barr virus. Yes, at least 95% of the adults who are living in the world, they have Epstein-Barr virus. But this is considered to be a less potent virus. But in recent times, it has triggered a series of research. Why it has triggered a series of research? Because this Epstein-Barr virus, the more potent Epstein-Barr virus, it's present in brains of people who have neurodegenerative disease, people who have Alzheimer's, people who have dementia, or people who have Parkinson's disease. These people's brain tissues, it has started showing high amount of Epstein-Barr virus. So right now, the scientific community is trying to establish the relationship between Epstein-Barr virus and neurodegenerative disease. And there is one update from India's side. So we have discovered, in fact, Indian scientists, they have discovered this Epstein-Barr virus. This affects the glial cells, a type of cell in neurons, the glial cells. This is being affected by the Epstein-Barr virus, and it alters certain molecules. We call it as phosphoinositols, PIP, phosphoinositols. So this is a type of lipid. The molecular structure of this particular lipid is altered by the Epstein-Barr virus. When the brain is affected, glial cell is affected, and the phosphoinositols, both of them are affected. This has been the recent research by Indian scientists, and it has been released in PIB. So please pay more attention to this. Now coming to the next part, what are the other effects? First of all, how this Epstein-Barr virus spreads. First, sometimes it is said to be the reason for kissing disease. What is this kissing disease? Generally because of saliva exchange. Good. If the virus will spread, generally because of saliva exchange, especially present in teenagers. I'm not trying to moral police, but understand. Generally, once a person attains teenage, that's when a general saliva exchange will start, most probably. So that's considered to be one of the pathway by which Epstein-Barr virus it can enter the body, and there are many other pathways. So this Epstein-Barr virus, it's present in at least 95% of the population, and mostly it is not potent enough to cause a disease. But recently, it has triggered research. Now, the method by which this was detected, that's important. We have used something called as Raman scattering. What is Raman scattering? A physics concept. Raman scattering. Discovered by the Indian Nobel laureate, Mr. Sir C.V. Raman. Good. First, incident frequency. If light or sound or any wave incidents on a particular material, there will be a reflected frequency. This is incident. Considering light, this is incident frequency. This is reflected. So this will have additional frequency depending on composition of object, depending on the vibration that's created in the object, it will have a different frequency. So incident versus reflected frequency will be different. So this particular concept is called as Raman scattering. Then how Raman scattering is related to study of Epstein-Barr virus. So generally, I told you people with the neurodegenerative disease like dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, they have Epstein-Barr virus in their tissues, correct? So generally how they extract it through invasive methods. They will have small probes that will go up to the brain and then collect the samples. Good. For the first time, India has designed a non-invasive method. We used Raman scattering to study about the Epstein-Barr virus that's present in the brain. So how we used Raman scattering? See, so light falling on a virus. I repeat, light falling on a virus. It generates a vibration in the biomolecules. I repeat, it generates vibration in biomolecules of the virus. Depending on make of the virus, there will be different biomolecule, correct? So depending on this, the scattering will have a different frequency. So each and every type of virus, they have a different biomolecule concentration. So depending on that, the Raman scattering pattern will change. So we basically used a method discovered by an Indian to study about virus present in the brain. See here. It may sound a little technical, but see first, Raman spectrum from an uninfected cell and then Raman spectrum from an infected cell. If a virus is present inside, it shows unusual Raman spectrum. So there is a particular Raman spectrum for every individual virus. We are trying to map it. So that this is a non-invasive method which has been designed by India to detect Epstein-Barr virus in the brains. Important, clear? Now coming to the funding. This research is pioneered by a program. It's called as a Fund for Improvement of Fund science and technology infrastructure. Fund for improvement of science and tech infrastructure. So this is a scheme under Department of Science and Technology. I repeat, a scheme under Department of Science and Technology. Done. You go to the next one. So I put a link to the PIB article in your material. Please don't delve into technical details of the article. So this is basically a press release from Premier Research Institute. You don't have to learn everything present in the article. You just you want to learn the basic idea behind how they designed a non-invasive method. So Raman scattering falls on a virus, the frequency changes, and that is mapped. That's all, a non-invasive method. And a little bit about Epstein-Barr virus. This is sufficient. Next. We'll talk about GM rubber, genetically modified rubber. So till date, the only genetically modified plant that is allowed to be cultivated in India, what is it? The only GM crop that is cultivated in India? Cotton, correct? Yeah. So sooner we may have genetically modified rubber, because in a test facility, India has designed the first ever genetically modified rubber. I repeat, first genetically modified rubber in the entire world. Who developed this? So what is the state which is known for rubber in area in India? At least a South Indian state? Kerala, exactly. Rubber Research Institute of India, RRI. This is located in Kerala. This is the institute that designed the first ever genetically modified rubber in the world. RRII, Rubber Research Institute of India. A research institute for rubber located in Kerala. But they try to cultivate in Kerala, but it faces stiff resistance. So right now they have cultivated in Northeast region. Northeast region is also known for rubber cultivation. They have cultivated in Northeast region. What is modified? What is the particular thing that has been modified here? See here. The biggest problem related to rubber cultivation. So even though the southern states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala, we have comparatively better climate or humid climate. If you go to Northeast, it faces severe or cold winters because the moderating effect of sea is not present, and also the altitude and every factors combined together, the temperature is much colder there. Wherein Northeast is also a significant contributor to the rubber in India. So in this case, we have introduced a new gene. It's called manganese containing superoxide dismutase. That is MNSOD. Manganese containing superoxide dismutase. This gene has been introduced in the rubber so that it can withstand adverse conditions. That's the idea. Done. Coming to the next one. So understand it's not commercially cultivated. This is just for testing. They have cultivated in a test facility. Clear? We have a message here. Hold on. Karthika's message. Southern Karnataka, Northern Karnataka like Nanjangud or Mysore is known for rubber. Yeah, exactly. These areas are known for rubber. In fact, if you consider entire India, so the top rubber producing state, 3 states. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, followed by Karnataka. And then comes the northeastern states. Karthik sir, 3 major rubber producing states. Clear? Now let's consider the major consumers. Who consumes rubber the most? A highly industrialized country. China, India, USA, major rubber consumers. Now, major producers in the entire world, who produces the highest quantity of rubbers? It includes the Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. These are the countries where, or which holds a major share in global rubber output. Clear? Yeah, tropical nations. Good. Coming to the next one, we have to talk about something called as a monkey bee virus. So what is this monkey bee virus? Recently, a physician in China, he was affected by monkey bee virus. Why this is an area of concern right now? This is not a new virus. In fact, it was first identified and isolated in the year 1932, a much earlier virus. But generally, it was present only among the monkeys. We have never seen a human-to-human transmission. So generally, it spreads from monkeys to humans. This is a zoonotic disease. So this particular zoonotic disease, it can spread through contact or non-contact forms. For example, saliva, excreta. If it mixes with food or anything, then monkeys can give us monkey bee virus. When for the first time, a person contacted monkey bee virus while he was dissecting a dead monkey, and then the first ever human-to-human transmission is recorded. A physician from the same lab, he has recorded a monkey bee virus. So which means a human-to-human transmission of monkey bee virus is also possible. The first such reported case is in China. And this particular virus, understand, it's a zoonotic disease. There were earlier cases of spread from monkey, but this is the first human-to-human transmission. So this particular virus, it belongs to a family called alpha herpes virus. It belongs to the family alpha herpes virus, and it has a fatality rate of around 50%, similar to Ebola. The fatality rate is around 50%. There are no vaccines against monkey bee virus. And the highest risk population is the people who work in laboratories most of the time, or the people who live near the forest areas, where in normal population, they are not under the risk category. Clear? Next, we have to discuss about the Nobel Prizes 2020. Nobel Prize in Physiology, in Chemistry and Physics. The physics part we missed in the previous class, we'll discuss now. First, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. It has been given to two people, Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna. Two people. In fact, the first all-women team to get a Nobel Prize. Not shared with any male. The first all-women team who got Nobel Prize for their genome editing method. So what is this genome editing method? CRISPR, C-R-I-S-P-R, CRISPR Cas9. So which is considered to be DNA snipping scissors. First of all, what is the use of genome editing? See, most of the genetic diseases, including diabetes and many other genetic diseases, they spread because of DNA. So it is transmitted from across the generations, correct? So if you are able to alter the genome, if you are able to alter the disease-causing genome, the part of DNA, then we may be able to cure genetic diseases. That's the idea. Now, how this works? You have to understand about a molecule called tracer RNA. Tracer RNA. So this is a molecule that's produced by bacteria. In fact, the entire mechanism, it was developed from a bacteria. See, bacteria's virus is a type of organism that can affect everything. It can affect fungi, it can affect bacteria, and it can affect other viruses also. So when bacteria are affected by virus, they develop a mechanism. They develop something called as tracer RNA molecule, which acts as a immune memory. Good. This was previously unknown. This was discovered by Mr. Emmanuel Charpentier for the first time, and then they used a similar method to develop something called as CRISPR and Cas. First, the expansion for CRISPR. Clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. So these sequences, they are part of the bacteria's immune system, correct? So this is a form of adaptive immunity. I'll tell you what is meant by adaptive and primary and secondary immunity when we discuss the COVID. This is a type of adaptive immunity that is developed by bacteria. Now, using this, they have developed a gene editing tool. The gene editing tool developed by this duo, it contains two parts. See here. First, we call it as a single guide RNA. Component number 1, it's called as single guide RNA. And component number 2, there's something called as Cas9 enzyme. What are the functions of single guide RNA and what are the functions of Cas9 enzyme? First, so this single guide RNA, this will bind to the DNA. I repeat, this will bind to DNA. We are talking about the first component. The single guide RNA, as shown in the picture, it can just bind to the DNA. Wherein Cas9, if you are going to edit something, first you have to delete something, correct? You're going to edit something, some sequence has to be deleted, which means they have to be snipped from the DNA. So this Cas9, it acts as molecular scissors. Information is coded inside on which part has to be cut or it has to be scissored. So if you get any question related to this, understand CRISPR is the thing that's going to replace the DNA, the particular part of DNA, wherein Cas9 is the enzyme that's cutting or trimming the DNA, or which is deleting a part of DNA, two components. So this method was developed and for which they got a Nobel Prize. Now, what are the issues surrounding this? Controversies, we don't need this right now. For preliminary part, this is enough. Two different components that effectively cuts a part of DNA and then alters the DNA or repairs the DNA. This is sufficient. Wherein the ethical concerns surrounding this, we will discuss later. Because in China, there was a doctor, before 2 years he claimed, he made the first ever genetically edited babies so that they can be cured of any genetic disease. And right now he is facing imprisonment of 3 years. Good. There are many ethical concerns surrounding this technique. We'll discuss this when we come to the mains part. Good. For now, for prelims, this is sufficient. Good. Right now, this method is not applied on any humans. Officially, it's not available. Clear? Next, Nobel Prize for Physiology. The field of medicine, 3 people shared it for their discovery of hepatitis C. 2019 UPSC had a question about hepatitis. Hepatitis C. How did they discover hepatitis C? So generally we thought there were only 2 types of hepatitis, that is hepatitis A and hepatitis B. For these 2 vaccines are available because we have known this hepatitis A and B. Hepatitis, the virus that affects liver. On a longer term, it leads to cirrhosis and ultimately leads to liver failure and ultimately death. good, a dangerous virus that affects the liver. So hepatitis A and hepatitis B is known for a longer time, wherein we did not know the existence of hepatitis C. When a person is affected by hepatitis C, if they are tested using normal testing methodologies, they will be shown negative because we never know the existence of hepatitis C. They'll be tested negative for hepatitis A and they'll be tested negative for hepatitis B, and then we consider it's a mysterious disease that's affecting the liver. Wherein these people, they use chimpanzees using a complex mechanism. They try to inject the same virus, the mysterious virus, into the chimpanzee's liver, and then using different methods, they discovered there is one more strain or one more type of hepatitis C virus. Hepatitis virus is called as hepatitis C. Now, why 3 people were given prize? First, one for discovery. Good. One is for discovery of hepatitis, while rest of the 2 people, they share the prize for designing kit that can detect hepatitis C. So understand, it's not just for discovery of hepatitis C. It's for discovery of hepatitis C and discovery of a testing method that can effectively find hepatitis C. 2 reasons why the Nobel Prize was awarded. Hepatitis A, hepatitis B and C. And hepatitis B and C, it can be transmitted through blood. I repeat, when blood transfusion happens, people may be affected by hepatitis B and hepatitis C. So that's why, especially during blood transfusion, along with HIV, they'll be testing for hepatitis. Hepatitis B and C, it can spread through blood. Next. Yeah, sensitive hepatitis test and effective antiviral drug. For all these things together, they have been given Nobel Prize. In your material, I put a link to the Nobel Prize page itself. Good, extensive coverage is given. Don't read everything. Do a selective reading. Next. Any answer for this one? Previous year UPSC question. We solved the same question in the GS class. Anyway, try to solve this again. Any answer for this? Okay, the answer for this one is B. Because hepatitis A, hepatitis B and hepatitis C. The hepatitis C is discovered recently, which means there is no vaccine for hepatitis C. Here they have swapped it. See here, hepatitis B, unlike hepatitis C, does not have a vaccine. No, B is wrong. Hepatitis C, unlike hepatitis B, does not have a vaccine. So this one is wrong. To only hepatitis C does not have a vaccine, while rest of them it can be treated and there are vaccines for it. Good. The official answer key for this one is C, 2019 question. Good. Next, coming to Nobel Prize in Physics. When we were discussing the black hole, can you recollect the life cycle of star? 2 different stars, low mass star and massive star, correct? The stars after the red giant phase, they can be classified into 2 depending on the mass. If it has mass somewhere between 5 to 10 times the solar mass, you call it as a low mass star. And the stars that are even more larger in size, we call it as massive star. For the people who are watching over the YouTube, you can go to the second part of Science and Tech. You will have 2 documents. One document called Space Science and the other document called Astrophysics. So if you take the Astrophysics document, I've given you entire detail about life cycle of star. Good. You can go through that. I've given link to the NASA's webpage and few other materials related to life cycle of star. For the people who are present in the meeting, you'll understand, no problem. So first, low mass star and massive star. The end cycle of low mass star, what's it called as? A white dwarf. Where in the end cycle of a massive star, there are 2 possibilities. First, a neutron star, and then a black hole. Now, this black hole, there were many predictions about black hole. Good. Many predictions about black hole. In fact, Einstein himself, he predicted something like a black hole, but he never believed in its existence. He believed in a crumbling star, but he never believed in a black hole, even based on his general theory of relativity. Wherein, for first time, Mr. Penrose, the person who got Nobel Prize in Physics, I forgot to put his picture here. Mr. Penrose, who's a close aide of late Mr. Stephen Hawking, he confirmed the presence of black holes. Good. It's a long overdue. He has been working with the late Mr. Stephen Hawking for more than 10 years. This is a honor that has been given after a long time. This was supposed to be honored much earlier. He confirmed it way back in 1960s, for which he was never given Nobel Prize. In fact, people thought, similar to how Mr. Stephen Hawking was never given a Nobel Prize, even Penrose may never get a Nobel Prize. Wherein Mr. Penrose, he has been given Nobel Prize for the discovery of, or for confirmation of, black hole. Now coming to the parts related to the black hole, taken from the Nobel Prize official page. Can you relate it with the class? Singularity. What is singularity? Where everything, matter, radiation, everything being squished together into a single form. You call it as a singularity. And the field of influence of black hole is what we call as event horizon. Good. So if you're looking at a black hole, you're actually looking at an event horizon. The space or boundary inside which a light and any form of matter and radiation cannot escape. So this is event horizon, this is singularity. This particular thing has been experimentally proven by Mr. Penrose, for which he was given Nobel Prize first. And then 2 other people shared the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize for Physics, it's shared by 3 people. One is by Mr. Penrose for his confirmation of black hole. And then comes 2 more people, Mr. Genzel and Guess. The names are given there in the material. Genzel and Guess. 2 astrophysicists who has been given for the discovery of black hole in Milky Way. Can you recollect the name of the black hole that's present in center of the Milky Way? We were discussing about the black holes. Then I asked you a question about active galactic nuclei. So when we were discussing about this AGN, yeah, I told you there's a black hole that's present in center of the Milky Way. What is it? Shantanu, your answer is correct. So I could read from here. Yeah. Sagittarius A star, exactly. I told you not to confuse this with Sagittarius. Sagittarius is one of the arms of Milky Way, wherein Sagittarius A star, it's the supermassive black hole that's present at center of the Milky Way. Yes. This Genzel and Guess, these people got Nobel Prize for confirmation of Sagittarius A star. It was known to be an unknown object, but in close to 2017-19, they confirmed the Sagittarius A star, for which the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, colloquially called as a Nobel Academy, they have given the Nobel Prize. Sagittarius A star, located at center of the Milky Way. So how they confirmed? See here. They mapped multiple stars, many stars that orbits closer to the center of Milky Way. Good. And they determined that few stars, when they approach closer to the Milky Way, they travel at a rate of 7,000 kilometer per second. Imagine 7,000 kilometer per second. The orbital speed in their periapsis position, it increases up to 7,000 kilometer per second, which is possible only if a supermassive object like black hole is present here. This is one of the many factors that led to the conclusion that a black hole called Sagittarius A star is present at center of the Milky Way. Clear? The Milky Way in which we live. Yes. All right, coming to the next one. Here to start with, I think I've given you information about Nobel Prize in Chemistry, Physics and Physiology. 3 important things. And then the World Food Program. So it got the Nobel Peace Prize. Those parts you can cover in current affairs. For now, I've given all the scientific aspects related to Nobel Prize. Next, we have to start with COVID-19. I've given you basic introduction to COVID-19. This is going to be an updated session. What we are going to discuss and what we are not going to discuss. So first, I'll tell that. So even now, the pandemic is not over. And many data that we have in hand, it's not certain data, correct? The efficacy of vaccines, the Guillain-Barré syndrome, the cytokine storm, or neuromycosis, all these terms, it's still under study, wherein the final conclusion is not yet arrived. So we are not going to confuse with anything which has not been confirmed with certainty. We are going to study only about things that are confirmed certainly and about a recent advancement. We'll read about different types of immunity. We'll talk about the different vaccines that are approved. How many vaccines are approved right now? Till date, recently they have approved the 5th vaccine, correct? So right now 5 vaccines are approved for emergency usage in India. So we'll discuss about those 5 vaccines and the working methodology. That's sufficient. Clear? Yeah. So first, when it comes to COVID, Understand there are 7 known type of coronaviruses. I repeat, 7 known type of coronaviruses that are existent right now, out of which 3 are common and they won't cause much of disease. Wherein the most dangerous ones, first we have something called as MERS-CoV. What is MERS? Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, correct? Similar to SARS, this is MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, which is caused by a type of coronavirus. Then we have SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, which is caused again by a type of coronavirus. And then the present version, SARS-CoV-2. Understand, this is the official name of virus, not to be confused with SARS-CoV. This is SARS-CoV-2. This is the virus that is related to COVID-19. The official name of disease is COVID-19, wherein the virus that causes the disease is SARS-CoV-2. Now coming to the structure. You know that it has a spiky appearance or a crown-like appearance, correct? So there are 4 structural proteins. Understand? So it has 4 structural proteins and 1 genetic material. You can write down. The 4 structural proteins. The first one is, yes, that is spike protein. This is the infection pathway. Spike protein is associated with latching to the ACE2. Spike protein. Then we have envelope. What is the purpose of envelope? It is to protect the genetic material, or it is to protect the virus. Understand, all the viruses will not have envelope. This protein envelope is present in certain type of virus and it's absent in certain type of virus, wherein COVID-19, the envelope is present. Yes, E followed by a membrane. Can you relate it with the cell organelles that we were studying about? Cell membrane, plasma membrane, cell wall. So similar to this has an envelope, protein coat, then it has a membrane, then it has a spike, then followed by a protein called as nucleocapsid. Four proteins. And then the genetic material. So the genetic material is RNA, correct? Ribonucleic acid. Not to be confused with DNA. Because we have DNA vaccines as well as RNA vaccines. So understand the genetic material that is present in SARS-CoV-2, it is a RNA, ribonucleic acid. So basically 4 proteins and genetic material. Now, how the infection happens, that's important. This spike protein, this plays an important role. This has 2 subunits. I repeat, the spike protein, it has 2 subunits, S1 and S2. The spike, the corona part, it has 2 subunits, S1 and S2. Subunit 1 and subunit 2. So what is the function of subunit 1 and what is the function of subunit 2? So first, this one binds to the host. You can write down the keyword alone. Binding is performed by S1, the front subunit. Binding is performed by the first subunit, and then cell membrane fusion. So only when a cell membrane fusion happens, the virus can inject the protein inside, correct? The virus can inject its genetic material inside the host. So, cell membrane fusion. This is performed by S2. Cell membrane fusion. It's performed by S2. Clear? Okay. See here. This is how it works. the picture A. This is the schematic structure of the spike protein. Yes, you could see two subunits, S1 and S2, which is present here. S1 is the front head, the part that can be used for latching to the enzyme. Good. So this will attach to ACE2. ACE2 is important. What is ACE2? Adults have more number of ACE2, wherein children, they have less number of ACE2 enzyme. So that's why children are less prone to COVID. It's called as angiotensin. Converting enzyme to ACE2 receptor, which is present in mucous linings. If you want to read a little more about ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme, you have to read about something called as RAAS system. Class 11, I'll tell you where to read it. Even if you have not studied the entire NCERT, I think when the class is finished, I told you, please study the biology NCERT. If at all you have studied, it's fine. Or if you have never studied the biology NCERT, no problem. At least read this particular chapter. Class 11, chapter number 9. Class 11, biology NCERT, chapter number 9. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. RAAS. Good. Please read between the lines, because it will be explaining about something called as angiotensin, and then it will be explaining about something called as angiotensinogen. So angiotensin, angiotensinogen, there are different class of compounds. This generally happens in kidneys and multiple organs. Maybe you would require around half an hour reading maximum. Good. Basics of NCERT. Please go through it. Wherein I'll discuss how the infection pathway happens, but it's good to know about background. Please read about RAA system. Good. I've given you where to study also. Now, step number 1, subunit 1, it gets attached to the receptor, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor. And now this subunit, S2, so this will undertake cell membrane fusion. So when this fusion happens, now once the binding is completed, now the genetic material can be injected into a cell. So what happens when the genetic material of a particular virus, for example COVID-19, once it's injected into the cell, what will happen? First, it will use it will basically take over or overtake, or this is basically like hijacking mechanism. It hijacks a cell. First, it hijacks a cell, as you could see here, and then it will instruct the cell to replicate the protein. Good. This protein is replicated inside. This genetic material and protein, it's replicated inside. Multiple copies are created inside. Once multiple copies are present or created inside, the cell will burst. What will happen when the cell bursts? It's a single cell, but multiple genetic materials are present inside. Multiple copies of RNA are present inside. So this entire RNA and the genetic material, it will be released into the body system. So this is how it works. The overall infection pathway. First, subunit 1 that binds, then subunit 2 that causes cell membrane fusion, and then followed by injection of genetic material into the host cell. The cell is hijacked. Following the hijack, then there is repeated or a progressive replication of the genetic material. So once it attains a saturation or a maximum level, the cell will explode and seeds the entire body system with a lot of infectious materials. This is the basic working principle for COVID-19. The life cycle of SARS-CoV-2 in host cell. Good. Please go through the material that I have provided. Now, coming to the mode of spread, how this spreads. You all know it's an airborne disease. It's not waterborne. It's an airborne disease, which means first, when a person is breathing without mask, if you are going to present near them, yes, you can contact. Next, exchange of droplets. Exchange of droplets. which could be by sneezing, coughing, kissing, or anything that involves exchange of body fluids, it can transmit COVID. Most importantly, surface contact. So even though the amount of time that a COVID-19 can survive on the surface, it's not yet thoroughly studied, but understand, if you have a contaminated hand and if you're going to touch your nose or something, it can still cause COVID-19. That's why we are advised to wear masks. The overall idea to wear mask is not just to protect us from the respiratory droplets, it's to avoid us touching the face itself so that you won't touch it with a contaminated hand. Clear? Next. We have to talk about the diagnosis methods. What are the diagnosis methods? Ever since the pandemic started, initially we were looking for this RT-PCR test, correct? RT-PCR test was one prominent method. So since it was a little bit costly and it was time consuming, we were looking for this rapid test. In fact, we ordered a bulk consignment from China, and since it was not working properly, or since it was showing a lot of false positive, then we ditched the total idea of getting a rapid antigen kit. So there are two types of methods. First, nucleic acid amplification test. Called as NAAT, nucleic acid amplification test. Diagnosis method number 1. And diagnosis method number 2, we call it as antigen test. In fact, this can be also called as a serology test, or sometimes called as antibody test. So what is the difference between amplification test and antibody test? First, the NAAT test, the nucleic acid amplification test. It will involve a collection of samples from the person, which is not a blood sample. It's generally the mucus samples. How it is collected? Generally collected from mouth or throat or from the nose, correct? So if a person is infected by COVID-19, he may have small traces of virus. It may have affected lungs, but still a small amount of virus, it will still be present in the nose or nasal tract, correct? So that particular virus is collected, and the RT-PCR test. RT-PCR, reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction. I repeat, reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, RT-PCR test. So this particular test, it will create multiple copies of a virus. First, the sample is collected. Step number 1, the sample is collected. And in the RT-PCR kit or the machine, this will detect any viral gene that is present. First, a small amount of viral gene which may be present here. It is given instruction to replicate. What I mean by amplification? Basically adding capacity or adding something, correct? Increasing the capacity of something is called as an amplifier, a sound amplifier or a light amplifier. Yeah, so this amplification test, this involves production of multiple copies of viral gene. So any undetectable viral gene or any small amount of viral gene, it will replicate and it will produce lots of viral gene. Now this particular viral gene can be easily detected. So from a small minuscule quantity to replication. So that's why it's called as polymerase chain reaction, and that's why it's called as amplification test. Nucleic acid amplification test. In this case, the nucleic acid is RNA for COVID-19 virus. This is test number 1. Now coming to next one, the serology test or antibody test. So it will check for antibodies. There are different types of antibodies. We have immunoglobulins, IgA, IgM. There are around 4 or 5 types of immunoglobulins. So these antibodies, understand, these are created as a response to infection. The immune system, when there is an infection, it is responded by creating antibodies, which will either consume the pathogen or it will neutralize the pathogen. Now, we'll be checking for antibodies that are present in the blood sample. So, if it is present, we count it as presence of COVID-19, but still it is considered to be flawed because antibodies may be created because of any type of infection. Even a normal cold or normal fever, it can trigger production of antibodies. So that's why this is considered to be a less reliable source. So it cannot precisely or targetedly find out the presence of COVID-19 virus. Clear? This is one of the less preferred method. Even though this is rapid, this is less preferred. Now, we'll talk about vaccines and about immunity. First, some of the mythbusters. I think we have discussed this earlier, but still, this is reviewed based on the present data from WHO. Good. First, let's talk about hydroxychloroquine. About hydroxychloroquine. Is there any effect? Please hold on. Give me a moment. Yeah. So first, hydroxychloroquine, which is considered to be a malarial drug, or it's used in terms of for the treatment of autoimmune diseases. Does it have any effect on COVID-19? Does it prevent a person from dying because of COVID-19? No. Yeah. It only reduces the body temperature. Exactly. So this hydroxychloroquine, it reduces the body temperature, but it has no impact on the health of a patient. Good. This is just like yet another antipyretic like a Dolo 650. It is not known to have any impact to increase the health level of the patient who is affected by COVID-19. So it cannot save a patient from dying because of COVID-19. Mythbuster number one. Number two, the dexamethasone. Does it have any impact? Two drugs that were in use, dexamethasone and hydroxychloroquine. How about dexamethasone? Yes. So this is a steroid, and yes, this should be used only in case of severe cases of COVID, not for mild or medium cases of COVID. Especially if a person is going to be triggered with cytokine storm or anything, in that case, it can be used as immunosuppressant, and this can be used as a steroid. Yes, this has a mild impact only for severe COVID-19 cases. Next, swimming. Can it transmit COVID-19? Swimming, sharing a swimming pool, for example. No. Yeah, till date there is no enough evidences to show that COVID can spread through water. But even though we say it can spread through droplets, there is no proven transmission of droplets through swimming pool or any other water bodies. Yes. Next, let's talk about thermal scanners. So let's say you get a statement saying thermal scanners can detect COVID-19. What should be your answer? Thermal detectors? No. Thermal detectors or thermal scanners, they can only detect temperature. If a person is having fever, it will be detected. But it need not be only because of COVID-19. It can be normal fever also. So thermal scanners are only for determining the temperature, not for tracking COVID or anything. Yeah, okay. Good. And next one, exposing to sun, does it have an impact on COVID? Is there any proven study that says exposing to the sunlight or greater than 25 degrees Celsius or something, does it have any impact on COVID? No. So far there is no proven benefits of exposing oneself to sunlight. No. Next, antibiotics. Antibiotics are often used in treatment of COVID. So what is the purpose of antibiotic? So there's a common misconception that it is antibiotics is definitely used in treatment of COVID, but it's not for treating or killing the virus. Understand? A person who's to stop inflammation, exactly. First is to stop inflammation, and most importantly, if a person is affected by COVID-19, he will have a compromised immune system, correct? So there is a possibility of getting a co-infection. So he may get a bacterial infection. So in that cases, antibiotic is administered. So understand, antibiotic will kill only bacteria. It won't kill COVID-19 virus. So this is to further, to reduce the further worsening. It is to avoid any co-infection like bacterial infection. Good. It will not have any impact on COVID-19 virus. Okay. Next. We'll talk about vaccines. I hope many of you are vaccinated, correct? Yes, most of you. At least one dose of vaccine. Okay. Where did you get the vaccine? In hospitals. The location in your body? Here. And you were advised not to rub, right? Generally, when we are injected, we will just rub it. Yeah. We'll give a hot water bag or something. But you are advised not to rub the injection spot. Why? Did you think why? Why we are not advised not to rub the part which is injected? Yeah, that's because of the components that are present in vaccine. So before going into this vaccine, first let's discuss about immunity. This immunity, it can be divided into two types. Immunity, the ability to fight against infections, it can be divided into two. First is called as innate immunity. Innate means within you, it's in you. It's developed in the body. That's called innate immunity. Then you have acquired immunity. Acquired immunity. If you're going to acquire immunity from some external factors, then you call it as acquired immunity. Good. So what is this innate immunity? There are many things. It can be divided into four. It is born with you. Basically, innate immunity, all of us have innate immunity. First, consider skin. Skin is a barrier, correct? The muscle and everything, it's not getting infected because we are covered with our skin. So skin is a physical barrier, which is a form of innate immunity. Understand? Skin is also a part of immune system, indirectly. Give me a moment. Yeah, next. First we have physical barriers, and then we have physiological barriers. So what is this physiological barriers? For example, the hydrochloric acid in your stomach. It's actually killing many bacteria and other microorganisms, correct? So that's an example of physiological barrier. A type of immunity that's born with you. Next, let's talk about one more barrier that's called cellular barriers. What is the cellular barrier? We have leukocytes, we have white blood cells, correct? So they will trigger immune response. So that's a type of cellular barrier. Immune system because of cells. And then we have something called as cytokine barrier. What is the cytokine barrier? This is seen related to cytokine and storm, correct? When a cell is infected, and if it's not able to repair it, first it will code a protein. which serves as a warning signal. So these are called as interferons. Interferons are basically proteins which are coded and created by infected cells. So this is where the cytokine storm comes into play. In case of cytokine storm, it's not the virus that kills the human being. It's actually our own immune response that kills us, because the body runs into a panic mode because of high amount of interferons that is created in the cell. A lot of immune response is being sent to the particular cell or particular part of the body, including lungs, that causes clogging, and it leads to death. In this case, in case of cytokine storm, the death is caused by one's own immune system, not by actually by the COVID-19. Clear? Yeah. It's because of the panic created by the COVID-19. Now, in case of acquired immunity, I will erase this part, then only I can explain the other part. Understand? First, innate, born along with us. Next, acquired immunity. So this is where the vaccine part comes into play. The first time your body receives an infection, for example, let's say a new type of infection is received, your body will trigger an immune response. It will try to repair the cell. Good. That's called as primary immunity. First, primary immunity response. When your body encounters the infection for first time, that's called primary response, and this is mild. It takes more time for the antibodies to produce. For example, if you are getting vaccine, will you produce antibodies instantly the moment the injection is taken out? No. We don't produce antibodies instantly. It will take around 10 to 15 days for the antibodies to be present, correct? The body works, and then based on the memory, it tries to create repeatedly antibodies, and then only it mixes in the bloodstream. The lymphatic system, it creates one. So that's why primary response is stimulated by vaccines. Keep this in mind. And now, the secondary infection. When the body encounters the same virus or bacteria or any other pathogen for the second time, it's called as secondary response. Also called as secondary response or anamnestic response. Secondary response or anamnestic response. Now, when this response happens, our body creates something called as an antibody. Now, relate this with the antibody test. For any type of infection, we will have antibody. So, these antibodies, they are called as L2H2. So, antibodies are basically proteins. Why it's called as L2H2? Because it has 2 light arms and 2 heavy arms. See here. This is a typical antibody taken from NCERT. You could see here. It has 2 light chains and 2 heavy chains. These are basically proteins. Good. It's basically a peptide. When we discussed about the basics in NCERT, we were talking about something called as proteins or polypeptides, correct? Multiple proteins being bound together by peptide bond. So this is a type of peptide. We call it as L2H2, 2 lighter arms and 2 heavier arms. This is a typical structure of antibody that is created. Okay. So if you are vaccinated, you probably have antibody like this. The next time the COVID enters your body, your anamnestic response will trigger, because your body is trained to respond to the particular type of infection. Clear? Now, coming to the next part. Different compositions of blood, because we have to talk about lymphocytes. We have B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes, 2 lymphocytes that are primarily associated with immune response. So first, what are the different components in blood? We have red blood cells, we have white blood cells, we have platelets, and then we have plasma. So in plasma, there is fibrinogen that's associated with blood clotting, globulins and albumins related to osmotic balance and about immune response, correct? Now we'll leave this part. Plasma is not needed. Platelet is again related to blood clotting. Red blood cells, they are related to hemoglobin, correct? They have iron, they have oxygen carrying capacity. Now let's discuss about white blood cells, the police force of human body. you have eosinophil, basophil, neutrophil, monocyte, and lymphocyte. 5 different types of white blood cell. And in lymphocyte, it can be divided into 2. Good. See here, like this. RBC, platelet, eosinophil, basophil, neutrophil, monocyte. And lymphocytes, there are 2 types of lymphocytes, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. We are going to talk about 2 types of lymphocytes, B lymphocyte and T lymphocyte. Okay, what is this B lymphocyte and what is it? What is this T lymphocyte? There are 2 types of immune response that your body can create. First, if the immune response is mixed in your blood, you call it as humoral response or humoral immunity. I repeat, it's called as humoral. Humoral means blood. When antibodies are created, we call it as a humoral immune response. Humoral immune response. First. Second is cell-mediated immune response. Cell two types of immune response, humoral and cell-mediated. Where in vaccines, they are creating a humoral response. They are triggering antibodies in your blood. So we call it as a humoral immune response. This humoral response is related to B lymphocytes. Humoral response is predominantly created by B lymphocytes. Wherein cell-mediated immune response, this is provided by T lymphocytes. Where these lymphocytes are present? First, this is one main reason why we are injected in the hands, because armpits and the sides of your body, this is where most number of lymphatic tissues are present. The lymph nodes, the lymph system, it's more concentrated on top part of your body compared to the thighs or any other part. So that's why we are not injected in the usual injection spot. Good. We are injected here so that it is closer to the lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system creates B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Clear? In this case, we need to learn about B lymphocytes. First, let's talk about the B lymphocytes. First, what is the function of B lymphocytes? This will release a series of proteins into the blood. I repeat, a series of proteins are released into the blood. That is basically antibodies are released into the blood. So these antibodies, they can be classified into different types. We have, we call it as immunoglobulin, Ig, IgA, Ig alpha. Then we have Ig muon. Then we have Ig epsilon. Then we have Ig delta. And then we have Ig gamma. So these are 5 different antibodies that are created because of your vaccine or any type of immune response. This is created by B lymphocytes. So this is applicable for COVID-19 and everything. Clear? We'll go to the next one. Yeah. So this T lymphocyte. So the next one, we will talk about T lymphocyte. So they are responsible for adaptive immune system. See, It's called as cell-mediated T lymphocytes. They play an assistive role. That's why we call it a cell-mediated immune response. So this will train the body to produce proteins. This itself will not produce proteins. This will train the body to produce proteins. B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. IgM. M for muon. Mu. Done? Okay. So coming to the next one. There is one more type of immunity based on acquired immunity. You have two types of immunity. We have two types of acquired immunity. So vaccine is a type of acquired immunity, correct? Because we are acquiring immunity through some external sources. So it is acquired immunity. This acquired immunity, it can be further subclassified into two things. Active immunity and passive immunity. What is this active immunity? Simple. If your body is going to produce the antibodies, you call it as active immunity. Wherein if antibodies are going to be given to you, it's being manufactured somewhere, produced somewhere and then given to you, you call it as passive immunity. The colostrum or mother's milk is an example of passive acquired immunity. Yeah, that's why it is highly advisable not to skip breastfeeding in at least first 300 days of after the birth. That's because colostrum or mother's milk, it's rich in immunoglobulins. It's a form of passive immunity. It's not triggering the immune response. It is actually supplying antibodies to the baby, which can help to fight against antibodies, against the infections. Sorry. Clear? Yeah. You can see here erythrocytes, basophil, eosinophil and everything, and then we have T cells and we have B cells. Understand? B cells are the prime players in the vaccine immunity. B cells or B lymphocytes, they trigger IgA, and all the types of immunoglobulins or antibodies. Clear? Next we have to talk about different types of vaccines, and before that we have to talk about how vaccines are produced. So generally it has microbes, correct? Microbes are present inside the vaccine. There are three methods or three approaches by which a vaccine can be produced. So consider the entire COVID virus, in the spikes and everything. There are three methods. First, we can take the entire COVID virus. That's one possibility, using the entire microbe. Possibility number two, we can just take the proteins. Possible number three, we can just take the genetic material present inside. So based on the type of approach handled, we have three main types. Using a whole organism, or using parts of the organism, or by using genetic material. Three different types. We have whole microbe approach, we have subunit approach, and then we have genetic approach, by which our immune response is triggered. This is basically training your immune system, preparing your immune system for a fight by giving a smaller dose of infection. That's how the vaccines work, correct? First, let's talk about whole microbe approach, where an entire microorganism is used. Whole microbe approach. First, we have three types of vaccine. We have inactivated vaccine, we have live attenuated vaccine, and then we have viral vector vaccine. Three subclassifications in a whole microbe approach. First, we'll talk about inactivated vaccines. So what is meant by inactivated vaccine? First, the picture itself says the genetic material, it's basically destroyed, either using heat, radiation, or by chemical. We'll take the entire pathogen and we'll destroy the genetic material. We won't weaken, we will actually destroy the genetic material by using heat, radiation, or chemical, or any forms. Then the overall pathogen, it becomes weakened. If you're going to inject it into the body, what will happen? It won't be able to replicate. It won't be able to infect the body. But still, since it's a foreign material, the body will trigger an immune response. That's called as inactivated vaccine. The key word here is genetic material, which is usually killed or destroyed. Which means the entire organism is more or less dead. It cannot replicate, but it can trigger immune response. The best example for this, We can take Covaxin. The Bharat Biotech manufactured Covaxin is an example of inactivated vaccine. So other vaccines includes vaccine used for hepatitis A, Then we can talk about rabies vaccines. 2 inactivated vaccines. Now let's talk about live attenuated vaccines, where the entire virus, it is weakened. The virulence of virus is lost. And if it's loaded into vaccine, you call it as live attenuated vaccines. The bacteria or a virus is live, but the virulence is lost. So the best example for this one is MMR vaccine. Measles, mumps, rubella vaccine is an example of live attenuated vaccine. So all these falls under the whole microbe approach because we are taking the entire pathogen, the whole microbe approach. MMR vaccine is an example, or most importantly, the Rotavac. The rotavirus vaccine is an example. And importantly, this live attenuated vaccine, it's not recommended for people who have a compromised immunity. Since it contains a more or less a weak organism, which is still alive, we don't recommend it for people with compromised immunity. Keep this in mind. Next it is viral vector vaccine. What is special about viral vector? Viral vector means carrier, correct? Viral vector vaccine. So in this case, unharmful microorganism is taken, and then it's coded with the protein that are harmful. In this case, if you could see here, this will give you an idea. The green part, safe microbe. It could be a virus or bacteria or anything. A safe microbe or pathogen is taken, and then it is loaded with the proteins that causes the particular infection. In this case, all the viral vector vaccine that has been designed so far, it uses the adenovirus that's taken from chimpanzees. So adenovirus, it's a type of virus that causes flu in chimpanzees, but it will not affect humans. So which is considered to be a perfectly safe virus. We take adenovirus. Adenovirus will act as a vehicle, or it will act as a carrier. So this adenovirus, it is loaded with the spike proteins, the S1 and S2 subunits of COVID-19. Good. So this will be injected into the body, and then immune response is triggered. Your Covishield is an example of viral vector vaccine. Covishield. And Sputnik V. Covishield and Sputnik V. The Russian vaccine that has been granted emergency usage authorization. Now understand, the viral vector vaccines, they fall under the concept of genetically modified organisms. GMO, correct? Because we have genetically modified organism. We have removed the protein and we have added new spike protein. So basically the entire organism is modified. So understand, the 2 prime competitors in Indian market, Covishield and Covaxin. Covaxin, manufactured in India by Bharat Biotech, it does not involve any genetically modified organism because it's an inactivated vaccine. We take the whole virus, we deactivate it by heat or radiation, and then we send it to trigger immune response. So it has no GMO products inside. Wherein if you take a Covishield or if you take Sputnik V that uses viral vector vaccine, this is classified as GMO, genetically modified organism. The usage of GMO on people, it has been diluted in fact in past 2 years because of these vaccine technologies. Good. In fact, in the material I would have given link to the Covishield fact sheet, the official website of COVID. The official website of Covishield vaccine, so from the Serum Institute of India. So it will particularly mention in the fact sheet, the first 2 or 3 lines, it will say it contains GMO organisms. So understand, viral vector vaccines, they are a form of a genetically modified organism. Clear? Now, coming to the next one. What if we are able to use only a subunit? Imagine we extract only the protein part, and then if you use the protein part alone to trigger immune response, you call it as a subunit approach. It uses only specific parts. It could be a protein or anything, but basically only specific parts of virus or a pathogen. It's used for triggering immune response. And then comes the genetic approach, where we use only the genetic material. So if you are going to use only the genetic material, RNA or any type of genetic material that's present in the microbe, you call it as a genetic approach or a nucleic acid vaccine. Use of genetic material to manufacture or to trigger production of specific proteins. That's called nucleic acid vaccine. So Moderna vaccine and ZyCoV-D. These two vaccines have a genetic approach. Clear? So we'll discuss about the vaccines. So these are the components of vaccine, by the way. This is important. You can write it down. Antigens, preservatives, stabilizers, surfactants, residuals, dilutants, and adjuvants. The 0.5 ml of vaccine that you took, it contains these many components inside. What is the use of each of these parts? Antigens, preservatives. If you couldn't see it properly, you can write it from here. Antigens, adjuvants, preservatives, stabilizers, surfactants, residuals, and dilutants. I'll give you one-line introduction to all these parts. A comprehensive coverage is given in the material. For the people who are watching it over YouTube, the document, it will be attached in the comment section or in the description section, either by today evening or by tomorrow. You can just check the same link. Again, you can download the material. Clear? For the GS people, don't worry, I will send it through the Telegram channel. Yeah. Okay, Asha has a question, sir. Viral vector vaccine, they carry only a subunit part of virus. Then why don't we call it as a subunit vaccine? So, Asha ma'am, if you are going to extract a part, let's say a spike protein or let's say a nucleocapsid from the bacteria or a virus, and if you are going to use only that part to trigger immune response, that's different. Where in this case, we have taken a subunit from the COVID-19 virus, but we have placed it on a adenovirus, which means overall it's an organism. When it is injected in your body, it's still alive. You are using parts of COVID-19, I understand, but you don't use only that. You put it onto the carrier is a totally different virus. A live organism is carrying it. So we call it as a viral vector. A virus is carrying the protein. Clear? Yeah. The carrier, the viral vector. The vector is the key term. Carrier is the key term. Done. Now coming to the first one. Let's talk about antigen. So antigen is the active component. Repeat, antigen is the active component. Basically the COVID-19 protein or the adenovirus altogether, it's called as the antigen. The working component of the vaccine is antigen. In case of Covaxin, the inactivated SARS-CoV-2 virus. In case of Covishield, the genetically modified organism, the adenovirus with spike protein. This is considered to be antigen. This is the working part. Good. Wherein the 0.5 ml which you take in each doses, it won't contain antigen alone. It will have all these things. Next, we have to talk about preservatives. So what is the use of preservative? Simple, it's used for preserving the vaccine so that it won't expire. Good. The main idea is to preserve the vaccine. So what is used as preservative? There are many preservatives. Mostly they use 2-phenoxyethanol. Phenoxyethanol. I repeat, phenoxyethanol. In many vaccines, phenoxyethanol is used as preservative so that it won't be contaminated or it won't expire. The antigen is over, preservative is over. We have to talk about adjuvants. What is this adjuvants? Adjuvant is the reason why you are not advised to rub your hands. See, adjuvants are a class of compounds. Generally, they'll have aluminum phosphate. the injection that you took, generally it will have aluminum phosphate or sometimes aluminum hydroxide or generally potassium or aluminum salts generally. So this one, it will trigger a local immune response. What is this local immune response? The basic idea is the vaccine that you took, the Covaxin or Covishield or any type of vaccine you took, it won't dissolve into the bloodstream completely. It stays in the injection site for a few days. That's why we are not advised to rub your hands. Clear? It triggers a local immune response. So your immune response, it starts from the arm, from where you took the injection. The injection site is the triggering point. So that's why adjuvants, it makes the vaccine to stay at the local site for a longer time so that it triggers a local immune response. The main reason why you are not advised to rub your hands. So adjuvants stays at the site. That's a keyword. Clear? Next, we have to talk about stabilizers. Stabilizers. Generally, sugars are used. Sometimes albumins are used. The idea is simple. The vaccines should not stick to walls of the container. It can be a glass vial or it could be a rubber vial or anything. It should not stick to walls of the container. So these stabilizers, which involves sugar or sometimes albumin, this will repel. Basically, this won't stick to the surfaces. This will reduce the vaccine wastage, correct? If it's going to be hydrophilic, if it's going to stick to the surface, it's difficult. It will lead to vaccine wastage, wherein this will reduce the vaccine wastage. Then we have to talk about something called a surfactant, important. What is the size of an average vial, the medicine vial? It has around 10 ml, correct? A single vial of Covishield, it has around 10 ml of medicine, 0.5 ml for one person. So once they open the vial, they can vaccinate around 20 people using a single vial, correct? So we have to ensure that things mix up properly, correct? Imagine if the antigen settles in the bottom. So what will happen? The person who comes towards the end, he'll have more antigen, whereas the person who takes medicine in the first part, he will have a lesser antigen. So the active components, it may alter. To keep it uniform, surfactants are used. So keep in mind, surfactants, it allows the vaccines to blend together. So it prevents settling and clumping. Settling and clumping. They will remain blended together. Done. Next, we have to talk about residuals. So these residuals, these are parts that were used during the manufacturing process. They are not active part of the vaccine. The best example, they use something called as a neomycin. So neomycin, this will prevent any bacterial infection into the vaccine. Good. This is not a working component, but this is a part of manufacturing process. This is basically to preserve or to increase the shelf life of the vaccine. This has nothing to do with the immune response. Good. Produced during manufacturing process. Next, dilutant. So generally water or sterile water. We don't use the concentrated solution, correct? We generally dilute it. So that is dilutant. The name itself says. So antigen, adjuvant, preservative, stabilizer, surfactant, residual and dilutant. 7 important components present in your vaccine. Clear? Which type of vaccine is used in pregnant women? Okay, a good question. So for now, from what I have checked throughout the different vaccine websites, there is a single line. Please consult your physician before taking a vaccine for the pregnant women. Right now, the studies are still going on. There is no confirmed analysis on the impacts that may be created on a pregnant woman. So it's safer for normal people to take, wherein pregnant women taking vaccine, it's still under study. Clear? What is the difference between preservative and residual? Okay, ma'am. See, first, preservative. That's a good question. She is asking the difference between preservative and residual, since both are going to stop the infection. See, first, preservative. This preserves the vaccine from contaminating after the manufacturing process, because once they open the vial, they're going to keep it open. They're going to vaccinate around 5 or 10 people, which may survive for around 2 hours after opening. So this preservative, this will help us to keep the vaccine in a pristine condition without polluting after opening it. Wherein this one, this is to preserve the contamination during manufacturing process. So residual during manufacturing process. Preservative preserves the vaccine while it's being used, once the vial is opened. That's the basic difference. In terms of use, the ultimate aim is to prevent contamination in the vaccine. Is it clear? Who asked the question? I didn't see the name. Jai Shri ma'am. Now is it clear? Why there is still vaccine wastage in many states? Good. The preserving temperature is the main challenge, because if you see, India is developing something called as Minvax. That's going to be the world's first warm vaccine that can survive at 30 degrees Celsius. You can maintain at the room temperature, wherein most of the vaccines, they require around 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. Sometimes the Moderna vaccine and everything, it requires around minus 70 degrees Celsius, which is extremely cold. But once you open the vial, it won't last longer. You have to use it sooner. So imagine a 45-year-old person is coming, or let's say a 60-year-old person is coming and asking for a vaccination. You cannot make them wait. So what you do, you generally open the vial, you inject them, and you wait for 19 other people to come within the 1 or 2 hours after opening the vial. But if they're not going to reach, you cannot use it again. You have to waste it. There is no other go. You cannot deny the right to vaccine just because you didn't get enough pool of people to inject. That's main factor behind wastage of vaccine. But in recent times, it's a vaccine shortage. So now people are ready. So once the vial is opened, it gets over in fraction of like 30 minutes or 1 hour. Right now it is reduced. But in initial time, when people had vaccine hesitancy, and when people who are aged above 45 were interested in vaccinating, then there was a huge wastage in vaccine. Good? Yes. Even TB vaccines cannot withstand tropical temperatures. Yes. Cold storage is required. All right. 7 components of vaccine. Is it only for COVID or is it for all? A question from Saranan sir. Sir, it's common for all the vaccines. All the vaccines that use viral vector, genetic approach, for everything it's same. Only the antigen will differ. The type of antigen used will differ depending on the vaccine. Clear? Now, list of important vaccines. First, Covishield. It's a viral vector vaccine. I gave you the information, correct? Viral vector vaccine manufactured by Serum Institute of India. First, 1 or 2 line introduction to them. It's a viral vector vaccine. A viral vector vaccine. So officially it's called as CHADOX1S NCOV19. You don't have to memorize it, but just give a reading. If at all you find it somewhere in options or in the part of question, you should be able to determine or understand this is nothing but Covishield. I've given it in the material anyway. Right now, the efficacy is around 63%, while this is still under study. Understand, all the vaccines, they are under emergency use authorization, EUA, which means phase 3 is over, phase 4 is not yet completed. We are running on an emergency basis. We have expedited usage, wherein phase 4 clinical trial is yet to be submitted, which means the efficacy of vaccines, it can drastically change once it is submitted. And also, different vaccines have different efficacy for different strains of virus. We have alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, 4 strains, correct? Right now, delta is the strain of concern because it may trigger the 3rd wave. Yeah, COVID-19, it's a Covishield, it's a viral vector vaccine. Now coming to the next one. Covaxin. So why this is special? Because this is indigenously manufactured in India, and it does not contain GMO. By the way, Covishield, it contains a GMO, genetically modified organism. It has adenovirus. Adenovirus, it acts as a vector, wherein the protein is coded to the top. Now coming to Covaxin, manufactured by Bharat Biotech. Who is the important manufacturer? So first, Indian Council for Medical Research, ICMR, and National Institute of Virology. National Institute of Virology. The prime collaborators along with Bharat Biotech. So whole virion vaccine. You people would have studied a lot about Covaxin and Covishield, no problem. But coming to this one, Sputnik V, again a viral vector vaccine. Sputnik V, V means victory. Russian-made vaccine. This is also a viral vector vaccine. So first one, this is viral vector. This is inactivated. This is again viral vector. So 2 viral vector vaccines and 1 inactivated vaccine. Now coming to the next one. Elastomeran. Sounds new, correct? We are so used to the term called Moderna vaccine. So the Moderna vaccine, sometimes it's called as Elastomeran or sometimes it's called as Spikevax. Different commercial names. We are so used to the company's name, but this is the actual name. Now, this is a mRNA vaccine. Messenger RNA. I repeat. Messenger RNA vaccine. What is special about messenger RNA vaccine? Understand? It contains RNA. The body will read the RNA. Our immune system will read the RNA. So this RNA will have instructions to manufacture the antibodies. Basically, this is not a living organism. This is just a code. You are delivering a code to your body to create an antibody. That's mRNA vaccine. Considered to be much more advanced technology. And understand, the mRNA, it won't survive inside. So once once the immune response is created, this will be destroyed. It's not going to cause any genetic changes. And also we have to understand one more thing. The viral vector vaccines, they contain genetically modified organism, but they will not cause any genetic mutation in human. There is no known effects of any genetic mutation. The organism, the tool for creating immune response is genetically modified. It won't have any impact on genetics of human. Clear? Okay. Next. This one is mRNA vaccine, messenger RNA vaccine. Basically, this is a messenger that triggers immune response. It has codes to create immune response. Next, we have to talk about something called as ZyCoV-D. This is also granted emergency use authorization, correct? EUA. So this is world's first vaccine that is administered to children and adults who are about 12 years. 12 years plus. And it's a DNA based vaccine. In fact, you should read the sentence completely. The world's first and India's first indigenously developed DNA based vaccine that can be administered to people whose age is 12 plus. That's the idea. Did we study about something called as BIRAC? BIRAC. Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, BIRAC. We are talking about BIRAC, right? Under the Department of Biotechnology. Yeah, they are prime players in ZyCoV-D. So it is funded and supported by Mission COVID Suraksha. Indian vaccine. Mission COVID Suraksha. Please read about this. Components of Mission COVID Suraksha. This is one part of it. So the vaccine is developed in partnership with the Department of Biotechnology. It is under the mission that's called as Mission COVID Suraksha, and it is implemented by BIRAC. Now, ZyCoV-D. This is a genetically modified thing. Again, ZyCoV-D. It's called as a plasmid DNA vaccine. I repeat, plasmid DNA vaccine. So what is this plasmid DNA? See, these plasmid DNA, they are non-replicating DNA. I repeat, they are non-replicating, which means once they go into the body, even when they are supplied with enough amount of nutrients on the host, they won't replicate. They will only trigger immune response. They are non-replicating DNA which is artificially coded by us. Non-replicating and genetically engineered. Okay, these are the 5 vaccines that are approved for usage in India. Clear? Okay. There's one more thing called as 2DG, correct? A drug that was developed by DRDO that was approved. It's not a vaccine, it's a drug. It is known to have a positive effect on COVID patients, but understand it has been widely criticized. So that's why I didn't include in the class. It's called as 2DG, a formulation that's developed by the DRDO lab, 2DG. This particular thing is known to have some positive impact on patients, and it has been approved by India, but it's not widely used. And after that, there is no news about it. So you can just read 1 or 2 lines about 2DG. Clear? Now, coming to the next part, that is, we have few vaccines that are going to get approval. Good. We are not going to talk about it now. You can read it in the material because then it will get much lengthy. This is the most significant part. 5 approved vaccines, types of immunity, and the parts of vaccines. And please read this particular chapter, class 12. Once again, biology, class 12 NCERT biology. Please read chapter 8. If you don't have time to read the entire chapter, start with 8.2. That talks about active immunity, passive immunity, the acquired immunity and everything. The entire basic that I taught you now, it's available in this one, NCERT biology, class 12. Chapter 8, 8.2. So I've given you 2 things. This one and then class 11 NCERT, the 9th chapter. These 2 chapters are inevitable. Please read them. Good. Exactly. Do you have any questions here? Yeah, only DNA vaccine is the ZyCoV-D. Okay. I think comfortably with the last 2 sessions, part 2 and part 3, I've covered most of the things that were in news. If at all I have missed anything, good, please check the material because I am just running a random check today. If at all I have missed anything, for example, there is something called as Martian blueberry, a type of erosional landform that is found in Mars, which is compared with Gujarat. There are 1 or 2 fringe topics which I have missed because it was almost impossible to cover everything in 9 to 10 classes and with 2 sessions. So there you require a certain amount of self-reading. Good. So the finalized document, it will be posted either today or tomorrow. Good. Please go through this, and I will attach my email address in the same document. If you have any doubts, you can contact me through email address, or I've given you my Telegram ID, correct? You can use it to contact. And with respect to response, for few people I had to respond a little late because of huge amount of message flowing in. Since prelims are approaching, when you drop a message, please mention your batch and please mention that you are from old academic batch so that I can prioritize you and then reply you earlier. Clear? If you have any doubts, the very first line in the message, previous academic year, please mention that. So then only I'll know you're in a hurry because you are going to write your exam in next 1 month. Good. Okay. Are there any doubts to be clear? Sample missing. The Perseverance rover, it tried to collect sample, but it's missing. But this happened in August, which means most likely the UPSC question finalization and everything is over. So it is not required for prelims. Don't worry. It is still under study. We have no idea why the sample is missing. Ma'am, mRNA and DNA vaccines are similar, but the only difference is it is RNA and that one is DNA. First one is single stranded, the other one is double stranded, like this. mRNA vaccine, it manufactures or it employs RNA that is single stranded, that appears like this, a single stranded RNA that has cytosine, guanine, adenine and uracil, 4 nucleobases. Wherein DNA vaccine, it will have cytosine, guanine, adenine, but instead of uracil, it will have thymine. That is mRNA, this is plasmid DNA. So two are different. The genetic material used is different, and the method by which they work is different. This just instructs how to create protein, and this one also instructs how to create protein. Both of them will be destroyed, and both of them are genetically modified. But they are not organisms. They are genetically modified substances, because we don't call a genetic material as an organism. This is not GMO, but this is just genetically modified substance. Clear? Yeah. Pfizer vaccine, no, it's not under emergency use authorization. Right now, there is only 5 vaccine, I think. Johnson & Johnson, it's still under clinical study. It's one of the less used vaccines, speculated to be released in next year, maybe. Clear? Okay, sir, can a person who has taken live attenuated vaccine infect a non-vaccinated person if he or she comes in contact? No, that's not possible, because the live attenuated vaccine itself, it's a weakened form. So you won't transmit it to the other person. It's more of an internal thing. It's injected into your bloodstream. Your body is creating antibodies for that. In the due process, you won't infect other person. So infection from one person to other person by vaccine is impossible. Okay, so I think we can end up the session. Sir, can we call nucleic vaccines and subunit also, as they are not whole part of the virus? Okay. So Shantanu sir, please don't leave the meeting. Please hold on for a minute. First, Shantanu sir, you're asking if a nucleic acid vaccines can be called as subunit. If you're going to use a unit from the pathogen, if I'm going to take a virus, and if I'm going to use a particular part of the virus, then you call it as a subunit vaccine. Wherein in this case, we have a RNA that's coded with instructions to create proteins. So we don't call it as a subunit one. Clear? It's a genetic approach. You are taking genetic material. It's not always the COVID genetic material. It's some other genetic material that's artificially manufactured, generally from frogs or some other organisms. You just code the information inside. So that's not a subunit approach. It's a nucleic acid approach. Clear? Yeah. Difference between DNA and RNA vaccines. So both are using genetic material. One is using DNA, the other one is using RNA. The method by which it's coded is different. But effectively, they don't contain organisms. They just contain genetic material. That's all. Right? Okay. All right. If you have any further doubts, you can drop a message to the Telegram channel or the mail. Good. All the best. Prepare well for your exams. Come off with flying colors. And I would like to see all of you back in the mains crash course or mains answer writing practice. Good. Definitely. So this is one of the refined, more dedicated crowd here. Yes. Study well, give your best. Don't run into panic. Yeah, don't lose your cool. It's that day's war, basically prelims. You prepare well. Yes. For the people who are attempting for the first time, don't study overnight. Don't spoil your mood. Relax. Go and face that day's war. Good. The best things will come to you. Thank you very much. I'll see you sooner. Done? Okay. One last question from Cynthia ma'am. If a person takes a shot of Covishield and one shot from Covaxin, this is an interesting question because two things. Many times there were medical errors because of different types of Q. There were cases where one person took the first dose as a Covishield and second dose as Covaxin. There are many reported cases, but right now there are no adverse reports reported. And in fact, the ICMR, it released a press release recently saying the immune response is actually good, even if they are going to mix up two vaccines, that is Covaxin and Covishield. They didn't talk about Zycov-D or anything. For the people who had one dose of Covishield and one dose of Covaxin, the efficacy is still good. They have produced enough amount of antibodies, good. But still it's not advisable to mix the vaccines. Clear? It won't have any fatal effects. Yeah, right. Okay, so Shantanu sir, Bhumohan sir and everyone. Mr. Karthik, are you present here? Cynthia ma'am, everyone? Yeah. A memorable academic year indeed. All right. I'll see you all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.